The rain was falling heavily. It was like driving through a thick curtain of water. He eased off the accelerator a little. Had to be careful driving on wild nights like these. The last thing you would want is to have an accident or a breakdown. You just want to be at home on these stormy nights. The moving windscreen wipers was hypnotic. He stared out into the glow of the headlights. The rain sounded like white noise interfaces as it baited the car. He was reminded of the opening scene of a Hitchcock film. Through the wash of the rain, he spotted a figure at the side of the road. The person wore a green parka and had their thumb jerked out. Why on earth would anyone be hitchhiking tonight? Surely you would just stay put until the morning. They must have been in a rush to get somewhere. He signaled down and pulled over. The hitchhiker climbed in. He shut the door quickly. Glad to be out of the rain, he pulled his hood back and sighed. He was somewhere in his mid-twenties and had wild red hairs and a thick beard. Then the driver said, "Awful night, huh?" The hitchhiker held his gaze for a long moment. Drops of rainwater trickled down his face, and he replied, "Yes, yes, it is." The driver pulled out and continued through the storm. The hitcher glazed over his shoulder into the blackness behind them. Seeing this, driver asked, "You okay?" The hitcher simply nodded. They drove on in silence for a short while. The BBC radiophone is blaring out from the car speaker, filled in for conversation. They listened to the radio and their own
A
thoughts
massive
as they
cleanup
moved on.
operation is underway in the Spanish city of Valencia after
After a
record-breaking
while, driver
rainfall.
asked,
Dozens
"Where
of
are you
cars
headed?"
were swallowed
The
up
hitcher
as
pointed
flooding.
north. The driver asked again, "Are you traveling to visit friends?" And hitcher replied with, "Mm-hmm." The driver couldn't tell if it was yes or no. He adjusted his tie nervously. The hitcher stared at him in his suit and tie. In comparison, he seemed scruffy in his parka and Pink Floyd t-shirt. After a while, the hitcher asked, "Do you work around here?" Driver laughed a little and said, "Yes, yes, I was stuck late at office today. You know how it is." And then hitcher said in low voice, "No, not really." Again they drifted into silence. The radio talk show carried on as they drove through the wind and rain.
The group has moved to a new studio. We've gone
The
up in the
hitcher
world
shifted his
from the
seat and
basement
stared
to
out the
the first
windscreen.
floor.
After some time, hitcher asked again, "No
We're
music?"
now in
Due
Studio
to
93.
concentrated in driving, driver didn't understand what he said, so he asked, "What?" The hitcher asked again, "Is there no music we could listen to?" The driver laughed a little and said, "I like the radio talk shows. I'm not really a music fan." The hitcher's eyes glazed over for a moment. Then he spoke. "I like listening to music. It calms me down." On this, driver said nothing. Several miles later, there was a news bulletin on the radio. The reporter tried to remain professional as he read the announcement.
We are getting reports that a patient has escaped from a Manchester psychiatric institute. The man is said to be psychopathic and is said to have a history of murder.
The hitcher jabbed a finger on the button on the radio panel. Tiny pop music blurted out from the speakers. The driver stared at his passenger, his question unasked. Then the hitcher answered, "I hate the news. It's so depressing. It brings me down. There is never any good news. Is there?" The driver did not reply. The hitcher said while adjusting his coat, "Don't worry, I'm not the killer." The driver smiled a little and said, No, of course you aren't." They drove on listening to the crappy music and overexcited radio DJs. The rain pounded on the car. As they drove on, the driver asked, "What do you do for a living?" The hitcher was quiet for a moment, then he grunted, "I'm a writer." "Really? How interesting. Have you had anything published?" "No, as yet I'm an undiscovered artist." "I'm sure you will make it. What are you working on at the moment?" "I'm writing a novel." "Seriously?" Driver asked excitedly. "What's it about?" The hitcher took a pause and stared out the windscreen and said softly, "It's about a serial killer." The driver did not speak. He flicked the talk radio station back on.
From the
A man was
basement
rambling on
to
with
the
himself
floor.
about the change in days.
We're now in Studio 93.
After a while, the driver asked, "Where can I drop you?" The hitcher said nothing. When the driver gazed around, his passenger had his eyes closed. He was asleep. They drove on through the storm down the snaky lanes. An hour later, the storm still growled and raged. The hitcher looked out the window. The driver steered the car in silence. Another news bulletin came over the radio. "We're getting more information on the escape patient. The killer name is Simon Hughes. He escaped from the Green Pasture Institute earlier this evening. He is extremely dangerous and completely unpredictable. Simon Hughes made his escape by changing from his hospital issue uniform into a suit and tie and pretend to be one of the medical staff. He stole a car and drove off. The hitcher turned to the driver and asked, "What did you say your name was?" The driver smiled a little and said, "My name is Simon." The hitcher stared in shock. Simon grunted. The headlights of a passing car glinted off the knife blade is in Simon's throat.